on a purely political sense, I get the feeling that John Swinney and the Scottish Government are a bit apprehensive about this and the ramifications of what it could mean if it blows up in their face. Because although it's NHS Fife, it's an employment tribunal, it's not the Scottish Government that are giving evidence here, but NHS Fife has said over and over again that when it comes to this, they were following guidance given to them by civil servants. So ultimately, this will become a political story. John Swinney was facing umpteen questions on it today. Didn't really say very much other than he's still got faith and confidence in the NHS Fife board. But how long can that line stick?
Well, Neil Gray's also, backed him much earlier in the process as well. And I think the simple fact for John Swinney is this is going to bottom their face. I'm actually amazed NHS Fife are still continuing with this, given the Supreme Court ruling that we had earlier this year. I think everyone, I would be amazed if Sandie Peggie didn't win. I'd be amazed if she didn't get awarded some form of compensation. This is taxpayers' money. Once again, a public body under the auspices of the SNP, obviously the SNP don't run it, but SNP are running the country, so who are wasting money on another legal issue that they've got no chance of winning. And it completely beggars belief in some ways that it's still going on. I think Swinney and a lot in the SNP are maybe gambling on that this kind of transgender debate is still quite a niche issue. I think John Swinney would just hope this goes away. I don't think that's the case. I think I think Sandie Peggie is getting through. We can see it when we do stories about her. People are interested in this.
Just to give you one example, on the BBC website, which obviously has a UK-wide or even a Europe-wide audience, it was the second most read story on their website today, which I must admit I was surprised by, but does prove that there is an interest in this story beyond Fife and the East Coast of Scotland and even the UK really. But as I say, when he faced reporters earlier, he was asked about this over and over again, and I did detect a bit of apprehension about it.
He's right to be apprehensive. The evidence today, will be worrying for Swinney, is the diversity officer upon whom a lot of this apparent,
policy
was based, and a lot of it seemed to be based on what was essentially
basically just saying
against the law. I mean, they were going against the law of the land. Remember, the Supreme Court didn't rule that was the situation from now. That was always the law. And the fact that NHS Fife were applying the law wrongly in the case of Sandie Peggie, it appears. We hear evidence today from the diversity officer at NHS Fife saying, well, hang on, because she's 27-year-old. Yeah. She's not a trained lawyer. She was there as a diversity officer. She was taking advice from other health boards and other senior figures within the health service. That's come out today. Now, it's a fairly chewy point, but it's an important point, because I think NHS Fife and John Swinney would like nothing better than to blame this poor diversity officer for the whole mess. They won't get away with that, because it's quite clear that this was from the top and it was wrong and it was against the law. I think NHS Fife would everyone a favour if they admitted they were wrong, apologised to Sandie Peggie, paid her a whack of money for what she's been through, and then the lot of them got sacked because they deserve nothing less.
I mean, I think that diversity officer started working as a contact tracer.
Right.
That's how she got in the door, and she's been hung out to dry.
Yeah.
She's been quite clear that, to term the phrase, I was just following orders. She's just following, policy and guidance that ultimately comes from the Scottish Government. And, and the government are still dragging their heels, waiting for, the EHRC to kind of rule on that, even though it's already got interim guidance. It doesn't want to do that.
I think we all know
I
the
don't
kind of guy.
understand why they're...
I think Swinney's hidebound by the policies and the almost cult-like commitment that Nicola Sturgeon and her acolytes had on this issue. He's stuck with that because a lot of SNP supporters are still stuck in that rut. Now,
I mean, he did vote for it as well.
Well, I don't think that Swinney's natural instincts are that there's such a thing as a gendered soul or anything like that. I think his natural instincts is that biological sex is real. I think he probably supports the Supreme Court ruling, but he's hidebound where he is now. And I think it'll be interesting to see how he manoeuvres the SNP into a more maybe amenable position, a position where they're not going to be quite so vulnerable
Does that
on
not
this issue. You know?
does that not call into question John Swinney's trustworthiness then, and,
No,
and John Swinney's morals, given that he was happy to back Nicola Sturgeon?
Politics, sometimes politics is out of the possible, you know, and I think Swinney is instinctively knows where most people are on this issue and will get himself into that position.
Well, I think he does. Yeah.